Welcome to the SmartTechCheck podcast, hosted by Mark Vena, your home for candid, insightful, and provocative conversations about the smart home automation, security, smartphones, PC and console gaming, and much more.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Vena, host of the SmartTechCheck podcast. Today is Wednesday, November 24th, 2021. If you've ever worked at a corporate office and have spent any time in a conference room, you'll know who Crestron is. Founded in 1972, Crestron is focused on creating automation solutions that transform the way people live their lives, making their day-to-day tasks easier and improving efficiency and productivity. The company is much, much more than just the office. Joining me for today's podcast is Dan Feldstein. Let me bring him up on the podcast. There's Dan.
How are you?
Great, Dan. You're the new president and CEO of Crestron, although you're not new to the company. We'll talk about that in a moment. And I wanted to welcome you to today's podcast. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm sure you've had a busy couple of weeks with the new role. Very excited to talk to you about that. But let's start talking a little bit about your background. We're going to get into that during the podcast, and I'm going to bring up the obviously some questions I want to tee off with you. But let's get just a little bit of background on you and your familiarity with the company.
Sure. So I've been with Crestron basically my whole life, and my father started the company the same year I was born. So I've been around the company since I can remember, and that included going over to the business after school to wander around and be basically babysat by the production staff sometimes, or wandering through the part stock room looking for things to tinker with and parts to put together and play around with. And also it was where I worked. Every time I worked anywhere, it was at Crestron, whether it was sweeping floors on the production line, building product, or later working in engineering and programming systems, and then eventually getting into the software side. I always had kind of a fascination for electronics and for engineering. A little of it, of course, I guess following in my father's footsteps, and somehow it just kind of resonated with me of what I liked and what I was interested in. So no surprise, I ended up going to engineering school. Mm-hmm. And I went to RPI in Troy, New York, and I graduated with a computer systems engineering degree. And then I joined Crestron full-time in 1994, where I joined the engineering department as a software engineer. And I worked on a lot of projects early on, some custom software applications that we did, and then some of our tools that we used for some of our dealers, programming tools like the Viewport and Simple Windows. And then eventually I got more involved with the firmware side, and I worked on our 2 series processors on that side of it. Then it was around 2002, I left the engineering side and I got involved with a project to implement our new SAP ERP system. Mm-hmm. And there I led a team of people that worked across the business, working with people from accounting to manufacturing to customer support, and learning every nuance of the business so that we could make sure the system would support the infrastructure and the growth of the business.
Right.
At the time, our business was really not quite big enough for an SAP system, but we always looked forward and always had very high hopes of where we were going to go. So we made that investment back then, and we built on that system ever since. So that's. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, implementing an SAP system, even when a company is small, that is not a trivial exercise.
No, not at all.
And because I've been through that a few times in my career with, by the way, humongous staffs of people to do that. And it's pretty remarkable that you were able to chalk that up as early part of your career. What I want to do is just talk a little bit about you're not new to the company. You kind of know where all the bodies are, so to speak. But talk to me about Crestron's mission. Is that as I said at the top of the podcast, the company has been around for a long time. Since 1972 when Richard Nixon was president. I looked that up. Kind of interesting. And the company is really you really can't walk into a corporate office and not see a piece of Crestron technology, whether it's in the conference room or other places. Video conferencing has blossomed in corporations. That's been obviously a big deal as well. But let's talk about why the Crestron mission from your perspective, and why has the company endured for 50 years? I mean, there's not many companies. I mean, when you're in the 50-year range, you're in Apple territory, and you're older than Google, but you've got some pretty good company for companies that have been around that long.
Well, I think the biggest thing is our commitment to our path, our commitment to our customers. My father felt it was always very important to stay private so that he could control the destiny of the company. That was very important to him, because he didn't want to have to answer to anybody but himself and our customers. And that's really what's allowed us to really, over the years, every move we make, everything we do, we're always focused on that core, the AV integrator market, and our end users. And when we're allowed to really think, what do we need to do for this market? And we don't have to think in terms of what do we need to do this quarter for that market. We can take a very long-term approach. We've always been focused on innovation. My father was, of course, an engineer, and that was his passion, and mine as well. So we've always built the company focusing on how do we solve the world's problems, and then how do we make it easy for people to do business with us, and how do we deploy those solutions to our customers. So I think it's that focus and that commitment that's allowed us to stick with it for this long, because we haven't gotten distracted by a lot of other things that would potentially knock us off course.
Right. Well, and you said something that's really interesting, is that many companies, especially publicly traded companies, they have to manage for the current quarter, maybe the quarter in front of them. They don't have that long view of the marketplace, and in the space that you operate in. You don't make investments for 1 year. I mean, you make investments over a series of years, and obviously it's the way that the company's being managed, I think, plays well to that capability. Correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. I'll bring it up here. You again, as I mentioned before. I mean, you can't say Crestron to somebody who's older than 30, and I'm not knowing who the company is. You've been around a long, long time. I like, and I've told this to your team, is that Crestron was really about the smart home before it was a smart home. It was called home automation, or a home with advanced connectivity capability. So it really, you guys really have been really ahead of the loop in terms of that. How do you see your engagement with the smart home? Because the smart home, in many ways, has been a DIY phenomenon. Right. There are issues with being DIY in terms of the support challenges and the installation challenges and getting all this disparate stuff to work well together. But at a high level, Dan, how do you approach the smart home, and how do you see tweaking the strategy over the next couple of years, if you are going to tweak the strategy?
Right, and we've been in the home for a long time. We actually started more in the workplace, and our foray into the home came more from people who liked our automation products in the workplace, wanting a similar experience at home. And that's how we saw this was a real market and there was real value here. And that's when we began developing products that were more specifically geared towards the home market. And that's how we also got out of just being a control company to also having audio distribution products and video distribution, and a number of other products that played a lot better in a home environment. at that time. So at that time, to your point, there wasn't much in the world of home automation, unless you went to Radio Shack and got your X10 button panel, plugged in some switches. There wasn't really much you could do. So
sure.
So we were really at the front edge of that, and in any new early adoption industry, things are always a little Wild West. Installs everything was very, very customized and very specific to each user and what they wanted to do. As the industry has evolved and matured, like with any industry, what you can do now with off-the-shelf products and really commodity products far surpasses a lot of the things that we were doing way back then. So what we need to do, and what we have always done, is continue to innovate, continue to push things forward, and continue to evolve. We can't. The industry doesn't allow for that sort of Wild West approach to, hey, yeah, we'll come in, we'll kind of figure it out, and we'll figure this out on the fly. People don't want techs sitting around their house for 2 months trying to figure this stuff out. So
it's a good point. And, there are initiatives out there like the Matter Initiative, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is kind of that yet one more, attempt by the industry to take control of interoperability and make things work well together. Now, one of the advantages, though, that Crestron has is that Crestron has a very, very strong dealer channel. And, when people ask me, hey, what should I, if I have a real sophisticated installation with, a large home with many rooms, I want to do different things. Having a very strong dealer channel can be very, very helpful because in many cases, those dealers know the issues and challenges that a customer has versus just buying some stuff on Amazon.com and then spending a week trying to get it to work. So how do you kind of, comprehend the channel portion of your model into this? Because it would seem to me that would be a very big significant strength to you folks.
Well, absolutely. That's really our differentiator. We're not going to try to compete with products that you can buy from Amazon. We don't want to be in that market, and primarily because we value our integrator channel, because that's what really gives value to our system. We try to make systems which, while they're as simple to use and as perhaps something that you can just quickly download or buy online, a properly integrated system done by a professional is a completely different experience. And even for some of the DIY systems where you could get even close to that level of sophistication and integration, most people who can afford them don't have the time to spend trying to integrate them. So it's incredibly valuable to have that channel, and incredibly important for our success in the home for the future. And like I said, I think that's really to me, that's where we set the bar as if you want to have a Crestron home, you need a professionally installed home. Right.
Well, it's fascinating because I like to tell people that, most people I know, people who are not in the industry, if you really don't want to become the CTO of your house. I mean, some people enjoy it. I like it. My guess is with your engineering background, Dan, you probably enjoy, taking a weekend, getting something to work. But the average consumer just wants it to work. Right. And Crestron's reputation as a corporate entity, companies are all about 24/7 and something working all the time. Before it was called 24/7. I mean, you could not install a video conferencing system or an audio video system or security systems or the HVAC systems that you guys are known for without it working, like dial tone. You pick up the phone, you hear dial tone. It has to have that level of reliability. And in the smart home, that still is a gap. People unfortunately spend more time getting it to work than enjoying the benefits and the potential.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why a big drive for us in the home is it's not about the features, it's about the reliability. And creating that experience, but making it a consistent experience. But when you want to go watch something on TV, you want to hit a button and it works, and you don't want to have to run down to the basement and debug wiring issues and other problems. So that's been a huge push for us with our Crestron Home initiative, which started as our Ping product, which really allows a much simpler installation process, a lot less customized in the sense that you're not writing custom code, but it's custom configured. So that means that the code behind the scenes has been tested and beaten up as much as we can to make sure it's rock solid and it's going to work. So that's, I think for us, the real next step in the home is to try to deliver that amazing customized experience, but in a way where it's as reliable as a off-the-shelf product.
I wish you well in that endeavor, but I know there's a lot of demand for that. I mean, it's so funny, and I want to get to the next topic, but there's so much demand for smart home solutions, and as you probably know, and I this is not an uncommon fact. The category at retail that's the biggest return category is smart home products. If you Best Buy has data around this, but you go to Best Buy, and who's dedicated a lot of shelf space to the smart home. People walk in, they love it, and guess what? If they can't get it to work, they have very liberal return policies. They bring the product back. It could be working completely well, but most consumers don't have the time to spend days and weeks getting things to work. So I'm glad you guys are continue to be committed to that. Let's talk about the hybrid workplace. The world has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. Knock wood, I think we're sort of coming out of this. What I use as a gauge for that is CES is actually going to be CES in person this year in a much more limited fashion because they're going to ask people to be vaccinated. But obviously you've got folks have a view of the hybrid workplace. I am sure, like a lot of other companies, you've actually implemented those practices with your employees themselves because you want to make sure that you understand the issues that your clients are comprehending. So let's talk about the hybrid workplace, Crestron, because there's still a lot of legacy customers and clients that are coming out of this. They still haven't really defined what their policy is going to be. They may be changing it over time. I do think we're in some kind of new normal where some companies are going to have some type of hybrid approach. They're not going to be skewed one way or the other. But what's Crestron's philosophy on this topic?
Right. Well, I think even if a company doesn't want to be hybrid, they're hybrid, and if for no other reason, because some of their customers will want to meet with them remotely. So companies have to be prepared, even if they're 100% in person, that they still have to have the capability to have hybrid meetings. And that's really where I see things going. You're going to have some fully in-person meetings. You'll have some fully remote meetings, but a lot more meetings will be hybrid where you have some people in an office and then some people remotely and possibly some people in other offices in conference rooms together. So it's really all about bringing a positive experience to everybody, no matter what type of meeting they're on, no matter how many participants there are, is trying to create that great meeting experience. And a hybrid meeting is never going to be fully like an in-person meeting, but trying to bridge the gap as much as possible so that it's certainly at least productive. It's maybe not the same banter out that you might have in person, but at least the ability to have build relationships and have strong positive meetings. And to do that, we're researching a lot of different types of new products that we can come out with to help that experience. We're working with our partners, Microsoft and Zoom, to make sure that as they come out with new features in their software to support that hybrid experience and the room experience, that we have hardware platforms that can really maximize the potential of those platforms. And I think we're going to see a lot of change and evolution in this area. To your point, some people haven't even figured out how are they going to do this? What do they want to do? And that's also an area where, for us, we've been dealing with video conferencing systems since they began. So we've been doing remote and hybrid meetings for well before COVID came around. And I think it's kind of incumbent upon us and really the entire AV industry that has been doing this to try to help be leaders here and to show end users what that experience can be like and help them to solve these problems, and really get the right information in front of them so that they can feel confident that if they're going to put in a whole new room system, that it's the right system for them, and it's more importantly going to be the right system for the future.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? You said something a few moments ago in terms of folks have products or looking at new products that address this hybrid phenomenon that the world has gone through. You even have products right now that within an office, and you have a mobile video conferencing workstation, if I recall, that can be moved from conference room to conference room, which I thought is absolutely ingenious, simply because there are going to be some people that are a bit leery about using the equipment that's dedicated in an office. To me, that's an interesting consequence of the pandemic, and kudos to the engineers who came up with that. The idea of being able to have a mobile platform that can be moved from conference room to conference room. I think that's a great deal.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was something we did early on in the pandemic, and just to try to get some solutions out there to help people through these problems. But I completely agree. I think it's going to have some longevity, because as people are trying to figure out what is their permanent hybrid model, how do they want to work, how do they want to configure their rooms, it becomes a great option to sort of have some of the technology available to you without making that massive commitment today. So a lot of our customers are making those commitments and are building out rooms to be specialty rooms. Others are kind of waiting and trying to see where the world is going. So this gives us the opportunity to support them no matter what path they want to take.
Well, interesting stuff. I've got to ask this last question in the few minutes that we have left. You've been with the company for 25 years. You're not a newbie. I used the phrase before, you kind of know where the bodies are. I mean that in the nicest way possible. But what's interesting is a lot of the clients that I deal with, with very senior folks, the people that rise to the senior leadership at the president, CEO level where you are, many of them, some of them have engineering backgrounds. Some of them have, more marketing business backgrounds. You've got folks who, have not worked for the same company. They're coming in brand new to either fix a company or continue the momentum the company is on. I want to talk about your leadership style a little bit, how the different roles you've had before prepared you for the position you're in right now. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I think the engineering background certainly helps because we're in the technology industry. And while every other aspect of the business is incredibly important, it starts with the innovation. It starts with the product. Then once we have a great product, now we need to be able to support it. We need to sell it. We need to make it, and all those other aspects. So I think the engineering side helps me to work with our engineering teams and make sure that our roadmap looks solid for the future and that we're going down a good path. And my background in the company allows me to work with all the other individuals in our organization to make sure that we take a very holistic approach to how we engage with our customers, how we deal with these new products. What do we do with them? It's not about just throwing a product out in our catalog and saying, okay, good luck. It's about wrapping around the support and the education for our sales team and for our end users, and making sure that we're putting out great solutions and not just boxes.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, let me do a shout out for your dad. Have you, what lessons have you learned from your father? To me, that's I'm putting you on the spot a little bit with that question, I guess, but I am sure that you were an observant young man working there for 25 years. What are some of the positive things that you think your father led the company with that you'd like to continue as part of Crestron's DNA?
Sure. Well, other than teaching me how to read resistor value codes and how to calculate the voltage in a circuit, he taught me a lot about just the biggest thing was how to treat people. Mm-hmm. And there were two major lessons. One was about being fair to people, and the other was about humility. That no matter how good you think you are, nobody has a right to be arrogant or think they're better than anyone else. And I think that's also back to one of your first questions. What's allowed us to be around for 50 years is trying to stay humble and treat people fairly. You can't always be nice, but you should try to be fair. And that means a different thing in every situation. But that's really one of the core values of whenever I'm engaging with somebody, whether it's a partner, a customer, an employee, I always try to put myself in their shoes and think, how would I want to be treated in this situation? And that's really probably one of the most valuable things I learned from him.
That's really refreshing to hear, because as someone who, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge behind me, who's been in Silicon Valley for the last 14 years, humility is not the most common attribute that you see. I won't name names, but egotism is not a hot commodity out here with senior level leaders, and it's great to see.
Well, it also helped that it took us 50 years to get to where we are, and not 5.
Well, honestly, humility, I get the feeling you're not saying humility just to make it as a talking point. I've interfaced with your team quite a bit over the last couple of years, and I know many of them. And humility is obviously, I think, a thing that is probably common with many of the folks that you employ there at the company. And it's great to see that from a tops-down standpoint. That seems to be part of the management style. But let me ask you one last question. Any other parting messages? We're going into the holiday break. I appreciate you taking the time for that. But any last messages that you want to impart to the audience?
Well, I would just say let's stay positive looking forward. I think if we're all careful over the next few months, hopefully we can continue to get through this pandemic and look to the future. And I think the future is very bright for all of us. So I think we just have to make it through these difficult times, stay and be positive and work together, and we'll get through it.
Well, those are great words of wisdom, Dan, as we head into Thanksgiving. So, Dan, listen, thank you for taking the time for joining me for today's podcast. For our viewing and listening audience, please make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of today's podcast. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Mark Vena Tech Guy. And until next time, have a great week and a great Thanksgiving Day holiday with your friends and family. Dan, thanks again.
Thank you, Mark.